It was the kind of change that didn't come with an announcement. No slammed doors, no sharp words, just a subtle shift in temperature that made the air feel colder even when the thermostat stayed the same. I noticed it one morning mid-sentence. I was talking about something simple, the traffic light on 5th finally getting fixed after months of blinking yellow. Harmless, forgettable conversation. She stood across from me, sipping coffee, eyes half on her phone. And then, mid-nod, mid-sip, she turned her head away like she couldn't be bothered to hear the end of my sentence. It wasn't dramatic, but it landed like a punch thrown in slow motion. That same morning, when I reached for my watch, the pocket watch my grandfather left me, the one I always set on the dresser out of habit, it slipped, hit the hardwood. The glass fractured across the face. Not shattered, just cracked. A thin, crooked line, like a scar. I remember staring at it longer than I should have, because the break felt too on the nose. I'd inherited that watch as a reminder that time mattered, that you never got back the hours you wasted. Now, it ticked unevenly, fractured, like it was warning me of something I hadn't named yet. Her behavior over the next few days didn't scream disloyalty. It whispered distance. Laughter that used to be warm started sounding clipped, rehearsed. Silences stretched longer, but not the comfortable kind. When I asked if she wanted to catch a new show, she smiled, but the kind of smile you give to a stranger who offers you directions. Polite, detached. The crack in the watch face became my anchor. Every time I caught it in the corner of my eye, it reminded me of that turn of her head, the way her body shifted away mid-conversation, like she'd already decided I wasn't worth finishing the thought for. And here's the part that stayed with me. She didn't seem angry, not frustrated, not even cold in the obvious sense. It was sharper than that, like she'd already changed scripts and forgot to tell me the new lines. Once at dinner, I asked about her day. She answered in bullet points, efficient, clipped, like she was checking off a list. Then her phone lit up, and for just a second, her whole expression shifted. Spark returned to her eyes, then vanished when she realized I was watching. She put the phone face down, smiled too quickly, said she was just tired, but I'd seen it, that tiny flicker. That spark meant for someone else. At night, when the house went quiet, I'd turn the cracked watch over in my hands, listening to the uneven tick. It sounded like hesitation, like a countdown I hadn't started but was somehow already running. That's how it began. Not with fireworks, not with discovery, with a glance turned away, a watch slipping from my dresser, and the dawning realization that something in her, something in us, had already broken. And the worst part? I couldn't shake the feeling that she wanted me to notice. The morning after the crack, the pocket watch ticked with a hitch. It made me pay attention. On the bank app, quiet wires slid by. Consulting, miscellaneous services, retainer. Not large, just regular enough to feel practiced. Do we use Sable Group? I asked, scrolling. From the bathroom she called back, bright and casual. Work thing. Tax prep overflow. Sable Group $1,200. Beneath it, personal transfer $600. No memo, no trip, no reason I could name. At work, a compliance memo warned about payments that can be misinterpreted. I read it twice with the cracked watch on my desk. That night I tried again. She chopped peppers, phone face down. What does Sable actually do? Consult, she said, knife steady. A buzz, a swallowed glance. Mild or hot, whatever you like. More names appeared. MMK Advisors, Laurel Services. Alongside them came small edits. Cash at self-checkout, receipts pocketed before I could see them, music turned up when notifications arrived. Not mistakes. Choreography. Thursday she set a plain leather toad on the table and kissed my cheek. Client bonus. What client? I asked, stacking plates. You wouldn't know him. The smile that ends questions. Please don't make everything an audit. When she went to bed, I lined the statements by month. The watch ticked beside them, skipping a beat as if circling certain lines. I measured what I could, amounts, cadence, explanations that floated and never landed. Friday at lunch, I floated the vendor names to a colleague who lives in that ecosystem. He frowned. Sable isn't finance. Think reputation management for people who want less search results. He paused. MMK's a shell. I typed both names and didn't press search. I didn't need a trail. That evening she offered takeout. My treat, she said a little too brightly. It was your treat last time, I said. She angled the screen away a degree. When the food came, she cleared space and set a water glass on my stack of statements like a polite wait. Later, I slid them out. I'm not accusing you, I said evenly. But we need to be straight about money. She laughed through her nose. I do budgets all day. Can home not be a spreadsheet? Then tell me the story behind these charges. She dried a plate and walked toward the hallway. I already did, she said over her shoulder. You just didn't hear it. I heard enough. Saturday. I set alerts on accounts she didn't watch and opened a thin notebook I wouldn't leave in the house. First page, dates, amounts, descriptors. I dropped the cracked watch into the car's cup holder where light traced the fracture. Outside my building I ran into Nate from legal. After small talk he said, if you ever need quiet due diligence, my brother does it, and handed me a plain card, just a name and number. I slid it behind the watch. The card's edge lined up with the crack like it belonged there. I didn't call. Not yet. By Sunday the transfers slowed, or moved where I couldn't see. We sat through a movie we didn't watch. Her hand rested near mine and never touched. Midway, she reached into the tote, touched a slim envelope, then tucked it back like the paper was warm. I didn't ask. The watch ticked on the coffee table between us, small and relentless. I didn't know whose sable was shielding or what MMK advised, only that money and stories were moving together, and my patience was not. Proof prefers daylight. Tomorrow, I'd make a call. I made the call at 9:01 a.m., the card still tucked behind the cracked pocket watch in my car's cup holder. The watch clicked once, like a nod. Nate's brother answered on the second ring, quiet voice, no theatrics. We met that afternoon. He didn't want a saga. Dates, places, vendors, he said, pen-capped. I slid copies. Sable Group, MMK Advisors, Laurel Services. He scanned, pushed them back. You keep routine. I'll keep eyes. If you change tempo, I lose contrast. What do you need from me? I asked. Consistency. By evening he texted a portal link. I set alerts and placed the watch on my desk, its uneven tick a metronome for patience. 48 hours later, photos. Her under a hotel awning I knew from conferences, talking with a man whose hand hovered, never landed. Captions. 1,703 hours, 18 minutes in lobby, exit separately. A partial plate tied to a vendor linked to our partner firm. Suggestive, not decisive. I could call it business. A second batch. Lunch at a bistro 3 neighborhoods over. Sunlight on the table. Her smile pitched higher than I'd earned lately. They leaned in for a joke the camera couldn't hear. Note. No physical contact. Bill paid by mail. Personal card. My phone buzzed at the same moment. Another. Consulting. Transfer from our joint account. Notebook. Hotel. Lobby. Bistro. Weekday. Transfers. Regular. The watch ticked beside the line. He called that night. Push further? Let the pattern draw itself. There's a conference at that hotel this week. Her company's on the sponsor slate. Check attendance, I said. I kept baseline, cooked, asked neutral questions. She said she might have long days. Big client, she added, setting her glass where my statements had been the week before. Good, I said. Next update. Sidewalk video, legal distance. Same man, same hotel, late afternoon. Boulders in hand, small talk posture, his palm hovering as she stepped off the curb. Pause and it looked like courtesy. Let it play and it looked like comfort. Either way, no touch. Another alert hit, personal transfer $400 to Laurel Services. No memo. I opened the kitchen drawer, lifted the pocket watch, wound it twice. The crack caught light, a thin white vein. That night she sat close and asked if I'd seen a new documentary about a tech founder hiding paper behind shells. Wild, right? She said, tucking her feet under a blanket. Her phone lit. She flipped it face down. It's always the quiet structures, I said. She hummed and drifted back to her screen. Before midnight the investigator sent one more. The man's conference badge, first name, vendor logo. A PR outfit that cleans up search results. Not illegal, the text read. Just careful. Careful. Like receipts vanishing before I could stack them. Like her new word for questions. Exhausting. I closed the portal and placed the phone next to the watch. 2 faces, one cracked, one dark. This was still explainable if I chose to explain it. People meet in lobbies. Colleagues buy lunch. Vendors attend conferences. Money moves under bland memos. Yet fabric tears where it's stretched thin. The alerts were a rhythm. The photos, a melody under it. Together they made a song I already knew but hadn't named. I told myself I'd sleep. I didn't. The watch ticked with a tiny limp, counting a night that stretched. Tomorrow, I wouldn't need a camera. I'd go see what the pixels couldn't tell me. I didn't text the investigator. I left before sunrise with the cracked pocket watch in my coat. No photos today, I told the empty car. I'll see it myself. The lobby looked like the stills, quiet, carpet built to mute steps. I waited by a newspaper rack, the watch ticking with its tiny hitch. 10 minutes. 20. The man from the bistro came through the revolving door without hurry. She arrived 5 minutes later, hair pinned for impact. Their voices were efficient, ordinary by design. He held the door, she let him. They didn't head upstairs. They crossed at the light toward the smaller bistro behind ornamental trees. I followed at a distance that could pass as coincidence. Small things carry the truth. Her posture leaned in, interested. His hands stayed palm up. When water was poured, she rotated her glass twice, a tell from her old interviews. She was performing brightness. With me, that light had been on dim for months. They started with business. Snippets slipped through the room's soft noise. Deliverables, scope, retainer. Then he said low, "If that's too much, we can shift it off your books." She smiled like a favor had been granted. My phone buzzed. Laurel Services. Personal transfer $350. She reached to straighten a menu. Her fingers brushed his wrist. It could have been accident if not for the half-second after. Neither moved. Then they laughed, and kept talking. That laugh settled it. The sound I'd been missing at home was here, unguarded, aimed across a table where I didn't exist. I checked the watch in my palm. The crack ran from 12 to 4, a line for what we both refused to say out loud. He paid with a personal card. I saw the sharp flourish. Outside, they stood too close for strangers. She typed, didn't send. He said something that made her look up like a problem had been solved. I took the long way to my car. In the rearview, I watched them split at the corner with practiced ease. He left, she lingered at a dark window, then righted her shoulders and walked away. No guilt, no hurry. On the drive home I tried softer explanations. Maybe she was smoothing a contract. Maybe he's a fixer who likes paying for lunch. Maybe the transfers were reimbursements mistyped by a distracted bookkeeper. Each maybe got thinner. The investigators' photos had been evidence. This was acceptance. She came in late with the tote. Long day, she said. She kissed my cheek like coworkers. Accurate, not invested. You eat? Grabbed something, I said, folding a towel no one would notice. At the fridge she paused over sparkling water. You good? Always, I said. The watch lay on the counter, crack catching the light. Her eyes flicked to it, then away, as if fractures travel. When she went to shower, another alert slid across my screen. Sable Group, consulting $900. The memo was blank. In my head, fragments lined up. Deliverables, scope, retainer, shifted off your books. I wasn't angry. Anger bargains. I was past bargaining. What settled in wasn't heat but the cold math of conclusions. I turned the watch face down. Acceptance doesn't need a second hand to count it. In the living room dark, I replayed the vendor logo on his badge. I'd seen it on decks that touch our biggest accounts. If he was linked where I thought he was, this wasn't just personal. It ran alongside my livelihood. The next move wouldn't be about winning her back. It would be about containing the blast radius. I brought the pocket watch to work and set it by my keyboard, the crack catching the strip light like a warning. I didn't need more photos. I needed a firewall. Compliance sends reminders nobody reads. I read them. Perceived conflicts can damage trust as much as real ones. I booked a quiet check-in, vendor boundary questions, and kept it technical. Access, approvals, logs, no names. File a disclosure if a partner's rep gets close to staff, the officer said. Even perceived. At lunch I called Nate. Hypothetical. If a vendor blurs lines with someone tied to an employee, where does the risk land? Everywhere, he said. You can't be the guy who knew and said nothing. Back at my desk the logo from his badge sat on 2 accounts I helped steer. If this surfaced later, my name would sit beside decisions I made while pretending not to see. I handed off approvals under workload balancing, wrote clean rationales for old choices, tightened email trails. She came home light on her feet. We got greenlit, she said, tapping her tote. With the same team? I asked, rinsing a glass. Don't start, she said. It's progress. 10 minutes later an alert slid across my phone. Sable Group, consulting $900. No memo. I set the phone beside the watch and listened to 2 clocks. One digital, one stuttering. Policy couldn't be ignored. I sent my manager a note about emerging optics, and proposed rotating points of contact for a quarter. I attached a generic article on reputational risk and left out everything personal. He replied in minutes. Good call. Near midnight I made a list, the kind you write when the next week sets the next year. Close the idle savings. Remove my name from the card she favors online. Export statements. Switch the joint account back to mailed copies so envelopes hit my office box first. Quiet sandbags before the water shows. Before bed she glanced up. You're organized lately. Trying not to misstep at work, I said. We're fine, right? She asked, like someone reading a prompt. We're aligned for now, I said. Sunday I saw him without trying. He crossed the street with a slim document tube and badged into the building where Sable rents a floor. The timing of our consulting transfers made a new kind of sense. At home the tote was open. She sorted receipts into neat stacks, then covered them with a magazine too fast. Work reimbursements, she said. I'm sure, I said, meaning it narrowly. That night my boss invited me to the vendor dinner for Monday's kickoff. A test. I typed and erased 3 replies before sending the safest one. Conflicts this week. Recommend Sarah attend. He sent a thumbs up then. Everything good? I wrote. All good. I filed a formal disclosure naming Vendor X and asked to be walled off from approvals pending review. The reply arrived before bed. Approved. I slept shallowly, the kind of sleep that's inventory. The watch warmed my palm when I woke, the fracture a line under my thumb. I didn't need to prove anything. I needed my name clean. Morning brought a text from one of her friends. Dinner Friday? The group misses you. Her people, not mine. I almost declined. Then I didn't. If the stakes were corporate now, what I needed next wouldn't come from a camera. It would come from a mouth that didn't know it was handing me the last page. I slid the watch into my pocket and felt a tick, off by a hair, steady enough to count down. The dinner invite came from her circle, not mine. I almost skipped it, but something told me to show up, if only to measure how deep the rot had spread. I slid the cracked pocket watch into my jacket. Its weight kept me steady. The restaurant was louder than I remembered, too many voices competing with soft jazz. I spotted her 2 friends at a corner table, already half a glass in. She wasn't there yet. I pulled out a chair, nodded, kept my smile neutral. They filled the silence with chatter, new condos, vacation photos, gossip. I played along, careful not to tip my hand. Then one of them, Denise, leaned forward, drunker than she realized. Well, she said, voice sharp with wine, at least she's finally being honest with you about who she's seeing. The words dropped like silverware on tile. The other friend froze, eyes wide. Denise covered her mouth too late. Oh God, I thought. You thought what? I asked. Calm, measured. She backpedaled. I just meant, she told us things were strained. And now she's, more herself. I didn't push. I let the silence hold, long enough for her to squirm. The cracked watch ticked against my ribs like it had heard a reveal. When she finally arrived, 15 minutes late, cheeks flushed from rushing, she glanced at the table and knew something had slipped. She smiled anyway, forced brightness. Kissed Denise on the cheek, squeezed my shoulder. Sorry, traffic was insane. I held her gaze just long enough to see the mask flicker. Dinner crawled. She overcompensated, laughing too loudly at stories, filling my glass before hers, touching my arm when she thought I wasn't noticing. But the damage was done. Her own people had exposed what she wouldn't admit. On the drive home, she tried small talk. You were quiet tonight. I was listening, I said. To what? To everyone, I answered. My hands stayed steady on the wheel. The watch ticked in my pocket, each beat a reminder of what silence reveals. At home, she disappeared into the shower. I sat at the kitchen counter, flipped open my notebook, and wrote one line in heavy ink. Her circle confirms. Underneath it, contained fallout. Prepare exit. When she emerged, hair damp, robe tied loose, she leaned in the doorway. You're shutting me out lately. I didn't look up. I'm matching pace. She tilted her head. Meaning? You shifted. I adjusted. For a moment, she looked at me like she almost recognized the man in front of her, and that recognition unsettled her more than my silence. She walked away without answering. The next morning, I found her phone angled just wrong on the counter, screen lighting with a preview she hadn't swiped away fast enough. A first name. His. Nothing more. But I didn't need to read the message. Her friend had already confirmed it. I picked up the watch and wound it. The crack stretched thin and permanent across its face. The truth wasn't buried anymore. It was showing through her people, through her schedule, through every transfer labeled consulting. She had staged her secrecy with precision. But her own circle had broken rank. And in the end, that betrayal cut deeper than any file or photograph, because it meant I wasn't the last to know. I was just the last to admit it. The night her friend slipped, something in me solidified. It wasn't rage. It was the final click of a lock. I didn't need a showdown. I didn't need her explanations rehearsed in mirrors. I only needed to leave, and do it in a way that told her everything without a single word. For 3 days, I rehearsed silence. I moved through the house like a guest, ate when I was hungry, worked when I was expected, nodded at her chatter without asking for more. At night, I lay still, the cracked pocket watch ticking unevenly on the nightstand between us like a third presence. She noticed it once, asked if it was worth fixing. I shook my head. Some breaks don't heal, I said, and turned away. By Thursday, I had packed everything that mattered into neat stacks. Documents in one folder, clothes folded with precision, cash in a plain envelope. No frantic stuffing, no rushed zippers. Calm hands, deliberate moves. I kept the folder in my car trunk for 2 nights before I took the final step. Friday afternoon, while she was still at work, I cleared the rest. A suitcase by the door, the closet stripped of only what was mine, drawers closed as if untouched. The house didn't look abandoned, it looked edited. The watch was the last choice. I held it in my palm, thumb running over the fracture line. My grandfather's voice drifted back from years ago. It'll tick as long as you wind it, but don't expect it to be exact. Precision fades with cracks. He hadn't been talking about marriages, but it fit. When the house was quiet again, I placed the watch on the kitchen counter. Not hidden, not dramatic, just there, where she would set her tote and notice the absence around it. I didn't write a note. Words would invite argument. Explanations, counter-explanations. What I wanted was clarity, not conversation. That evening, she walked in humming, tote over her arm, eyes bright from a glass of wine with colleagues. She set the tote down, keys jangling against the counter. The sound cut short when she saw the watch, alone and cracked. She called my name once, then again, louder. No answer. She moved through the rooms. Our room, the spare, even the laundry closet. The suitcase was gone, the folders gone, my shoes missing from the rack. She stopped in the doorway of the bedroom, breathing sharp, realizing the silence was permanent. I wasn't there to see her scramble. I'd already driven 2 towns over, the watch's absence as loud as any confrontation could be. Because sometimes the sharpest words are none at all. The first thing I noticed in the new place was the silence. Not the kind we used to weaponize between us, just room tone. Refrigerator hum, hallway footsteps, the slow settling of a building after midnight. No uneven tick. The pocket watch stayed on the kitchen counter I'd left behind like a small monument to time misspent. I didn't want its sound here. I wanted proof it could stop. I changed the number, killed location sharing, moved every alert to my office box. The bank flagged a cluster of consulting pulls once my name disappeared from the joint path. They reached out. I confirmed the split, authorized nothing, shut the last loophole. Money learned new routes. Her transfers kept their old names and, from the outside, their old purpose. From the inside, they were just gravity with a balance due. She called, then texted, then tried email with subject lines like emergencies that had nothing inside but tone. I read the first 3, then archived the rest unopened. It wasn't punishment. It was personal accountability finally allowed to arrive without me standing in the doorway catching it. When she couldn't reach me, she posted bright photos with captions that tried to borrow light. New beginnings, trust the process. The likes were softer than she remembered. Mutuals stayed quiet. A friend sent a single line. Proud of you for leaving. I didn't answer. I wasn't collecting congratulations. I was keeping distance. At work, the disclosure I filed did what it was supposed to do. My name moved off their decks, my approvals reassigned to people who slept well. Vendor X's rep stopped appearing on our calendars, folded back behind other faces with safer histories. Nobody asked me for the story. They didn't need it. Boundaries are their own explanation. Nights were methodical. Laundry, a list, a walk. I kept a single framed photo in a drawer, us on a hiking trail years ago, back when reaching for each other wasn't a performance. I didn't look at it for long. Memory has a way of mislabeling. I let it sit in the dark and called that mercy. News from her side traveled without effort. A mutual friend left a voice memo he didn't mean to, background bar noise. Her voice insisting I had disappeared to make a point. Maybe she believed that. People who stage think exits are theater. Mine wasn't. It was a ledger finally balanced. The 20 small requirements she tried to enforce. Tone checks, scripted apologies, rules for how I was allowed to bring up a concern. Evaporated the moment I stopped applying for them. Systems hate vacuum. I gave hers one. Once, late, she parked outside my building and didn't come up. I watched from the window as she scrolled, typed, deleted, rested her forehead on the steering wheel. The glow lit her hands the way candlelight once did at our table. I stood there until she drove off. No wave, no message, no tug. I wasn't cold, I was finished. There's a difference. The bills changed voices. Sable and Laurel kept sending receipts to the address on file, the one I'd moved to a locked box across town. I stacked them like blank chapters I'd never read. Somewhere, she was explaining those charges to someone who didn't nod as easily as I used to. Somewhere, the man who loved paying for lunches was learning that public proximity has a cost when disclosure shows up with dates. None of that needed my help. Gravity works fine on its own. On the last night of the month, I walked past a pawn shop still lit after hours. In the window, a tray of old watches, faces nicked and quiet. For a second I pictured mine among them, glass cracked from 12 to 4, waiting for someone who thought they could wind precision back into it. I kept walking. Let it sit where I left it. Let her hear its uneven tick if she wanted company. She sent one final message from a new account. 4 words, no punctuation. Can we reset this? I stared until the screen dimmed. Reset implies the board remains. I flipped it weeks ago. I powered the phone down, placed it face down on the table, and looked at the empty space my life now had the decency to give back. No speeches. No ceremony. I didn't need closure from a door I had already locked from my side. She can keep the cracked watch. I kept the time.